We at the IoD are keen to host an event on technology and looking at what might happen in 2015 because there's so much out there about what's going to happen, and actually we're going to be arguing today that it's going to be more of a business-led innovation over the next 10 to 15 years. The IoD members enjoy events like this because, as you can see, we've got tables all around where they can sit and discuss the presentation afterwards about what they think is going to happen and how they can use technology in their small and medium-sized enterprises to benefit them through 2015.
I'd like to welcome you all to the magnificent Nash Room and to our headquarters here on Pall. This morning, Jimmy McLoughlin, who is Deputy Head of the Policy Unit here at the IoD, is going to take you through some of his top-line thoughts on what we can expect to see in the course of 2015, and that's going to touch on some trends, some regulatory concerns, and without further ado, I shall hand over to Jimmy McLoughlin.
Most of this morning's talk is going to focus on kind of Britain's role and what's going to be happening in British technology. So just a bit more information on the Global Entrepreneur Index. So as you can see, we're pretty evenly spread actually. We're doing it quite well across all the areas, but we are still being beaten in areas by the Russians in human capital, so skills, and skills again with Greece in terms of the actual startup skills that we have. And the reason why we're doing so well partly is because the jewel in the crown is London. We have the city right next to Tech City. So the old financial institutions next to Tech City. So essentially we have the best parts of Silicon Valley and the best parts of New York merged into one. The challenge for policymakers is going to be over the next 10 to 15 years is whether we can spread that well throughout the country.
The concept of what the UK has so concentrated into London, which is that Silicon Valley meets Wall Street. And I just began to think of the third leg of that stool, which could be the IoD from the mainstream element, because that's what you need, the realization of the value of these investments into this technology and innovation. And really, the IoD audience are the people that need to put that into the market and create the value.
He was particularly upbeat about the potential of London to be some sort of combination between New York and Silicon Valley. As much as I would love this to be true, I think we may have a little further to go than he may have been letting on.
But what we've had since 2000s, kind of since the dot-com boom and so on, is a vertical axis of where we've had new technology being created. So the likes of Facebook, Google, Twitter, these are new things that didn't actually exist before. My theory on this, and where we're going to go ahead over this year and the sort of coming 5 to 10 years, is essentially that we're having a bit of a convergence on this. And one of the sectors that I look to more than anything for this is actually the retail sector. John Lewis and Amazon, two very different types of retailer. But what is interesting is the way that this is changing and going to change this year. In terms of the delivery methods, both are now using a system called click and collect. So in essence, you'll be able to order something today, order something this morning, and then be able to pick it up on the way home. So 3 things that you will read about that are going to happen in 2015. So that's drones on the far left, a 3D printer in the middle, and the Internet of Things, as it states in the end. I don't actually think that any of these are going to have a massive impact in 2015. But the difference with these and the whole change that we're going to see in the next 10 to 15 years is that business is going to start leading technological change.
I did agree with when he was talking about, the 3D printers and the drones. That's not going to happen. Yeah, I fully agree with that.
Because I think, hopefully, in the near future, people will actually be able to bring 3D printing on site rather than getting other people to deliver it for them. And that could have a huge potential for the public sector as well as private companies.
Another thing that gets predicted a lot is the smartwatch and wearable technology. But if lots of people are walking around with an Apple Watch, it becomes more of a fashion statement than it does a technological statement. But the other thing I should say is that we still love our mobile phones and our smartphones. And over the next couple of years, we're going to be hitting about 85–90% point in the United Kingdom. So something that I do think is going to happen, is going to get bigger and bigger this year, is the sharing economy. So these are things that are changing and changing quickly. They've changed because of 4G. People can check these things now anywhere on the move. So I'm sure most of you will have heard of perhaps the first 2 companies in there, Uber and Airbnb. Another big one that's come out is the renting of power tools. We at the IoD did a report on this at the end of last year, calling for the government to bring in a kind of sharing economy allowance. And so on to the next side of things that I think is going to get big this year. The alternate finance sort of sector was doing about 250 million. In 2013, it went up to about 660. In 2014, it doubled again. I think this is just going to get more and more mainstream for businesses using it as well. I can't go through 2015 and predictions for the rest of the year without mentioning the general election and the enormous impact that technology could have on that. Well, that's what the political class would like you to believe anyway. Actually, I think that it often gets over-egged in terms of this will be the first digital election. We had that just before the 2010 election. Everyone was saying this is going to be a digital election, people are going to decide this via the internet and so on. Just didn't turn out to be true. In fact, if anything, the last election was dominated by the television debates, a pretty old form of technological medium for it. There we are. In essence, that is my predictions for 2015. Thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to taking some questions from you.
Because government has been really clamping down on visas and getting talent from overseas and keeping talent from internally and kicking out students who come, international students. How have you sort of influenced the government and those kind of policies there?
I think that we are aware of how it is benefiting the entire country, because it is a huge, it is great that immigrants look here to come and start their businesses, and when they think of coming to Europe, they think, I want to be in London. So that is something that we always need to have at the kind of forefront of our mind about it.
Well, I really wanted to get a sense of where the IoD was in relation to technology and growth in the city and around the UK. And I guess I was very surprised, positively surprised, at the amount of thought leadership that lives within the policy unit. I really wasn't aware that we were so connected to Tech City and to what's going on in the technology sector.
Well, I own a small digital marketing agency myself, and so I'm very interested in emerging technologies, especially sort of the startup industries, very interesting to our company. So to come along and hear the viewpoints of the masses is actually pretty good for us.
We haven't mentioned China and the Far East, so just any reflections on what's coming from that direction?
Enormous kind of winds of change coming across there in terms of, they now sort of have the third biggest smartphone producer, and it's just done in China.
Models. So for example, with alternate finance, what impact that might have on the more traditional retail banks, how they can adapt to that?
I think they will take it on. I think they'll have to. If I were advising a retail bank, I would look at sort of buying one of these P2P firms and having it as an arm of what they already offer, because they'll still need, these guys aren't offering current accounts and so on, so they'll still need the kind of traditional side of banking. We had lots of questions. We focused it a lot on Britain, and it shows the mindset of IoD members that they wanted to know more about the kind of global impacts of things, how China was going to be impacting, where can we expect America to take the lead. So that was really positive and really thought-provoking as well.